Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Before opening the meeting, I have to give notice of the meeting being recorded. Clause 91(4) of the Governance and Meeting Conduct Law provides the following. This public meeting is being recorded to improve access to the meeting for our community. The recording will be published and will be retained by Council in accordance with Council's legal obligations. As a visitor in the public gallery, your presence may be recorded. I now declare the meeting open, and I acknowledge the traditional owners. We acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we are meeting. We pay our respects to their elders and to elders from other communities who may be here today. And the opening prayer. Almighty God, we humbly ask Thee to bless and guide this council in its deliberations so that we may truly preserve the welfare of the people whom we serve. Amen. Thank you. For those members of the gallery who haven't been here before, it's normal that we allow the gallery to ask questions on items on the agenda, and that will be before we actually move the recommendations. So before the councillors speak to the motions, so you'll, as we go through the agenda, you'll be able to pick that up. There are no apologies. There is no citizens' ceremony. What? Well,
Mayor, I'll be absent for the special meeting on May the 2nd. Be absent.
I haven't got down to that.
What's absent?
Councillor Benton has indicated a pecuniary interest.
No. Absent leave of absence for the meeting in May the
Oh.
2nd.
I'm sorry. The special council meeting of the 2nd of May. Yeah. So can I have someone move that Councillor Bussell be granted leave of absence for the special? Councillor Benton be granted leave of absence for the special meeting on the 2nd of May.
Ruth moved it.
Councillor Amy, seconded Councillor Rees. Motion's carried. Sorry about that, but I wasn't made aware of it. Confirmation of the minutes. Someone like to move the minutes of the meeting the 28th of March? Move Councillor Fuller. Seconded. Councillor Benton. Any discussion? I declare the motion carried. Conflict of interest disclosure.
Yes. Mr. Mayor, I've got conflict of interest in item 6.2, I think it is. 16.1.
16.1. Thank you. There's no petitions, no deputations, presentation of reports, no councillor reports, officers' reports. Moving along to corporate services. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
13.1.
This report is regarding Council's progress towards its council plan. When Council prepares its council plan, it develops indicators that will show whether Council is making progress towards achieving its goals. This report is reported to quarterly, and we have 3 quarters available in this report tonight. The recommendation is that Council receives the Council Plan 2015 to 17 progress report for the period 1 July 2016 to 31st of March 2017.
Are there any questions from the gallery? There's no questions from the gallery. I have someone move the recommendation. Councillor Fuller, Councillor Bustle. Any discussion? I declare the motion carried. 13.2, thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. This report gives details of Council's performance towards its year-to-date revised budget, and Council is required to do this quarterly. The report shows that Council has an unfavourable variance of 2% in its operating income, and a favourable variance of 4% against its operating expenditure. That nets off to an overall favourable variance of $915,000, and Council has an achievement against its capital works program of 46%, and if you include Council's purchase orders that it's raised, that comes up to 84%. The recommendation is that Council reviews and endorses the March 2017 quarterly finance report.
Questions from the gallery? No questions from the gallery? Someone move the recommendation, please. Councillor Rees, seconder. Councillor Bustle. Any discussion? No discussion, I'll declare the motion carried. Infrastructure services.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. So this first report is brought to Council to seek authorisation to award a contract for drainage and parking upgrade in Park Lane, Wangaratta. So Park Lane's the road that runs beside the HP Bar Reserve, particularly next to Bar 1 and Bar 2. The eastern side of the road has got open drains, which have been a problem for a long time with water pooling, and the depth of those drains makes it impossible at the moment to fully drain that oval area. So this project will underground the drainage to the full length of Park Lane. We'll put a shared path in for the full length, curb and channel the full length, and it will also create 67 or 66 parking bays, 45-degree angle parking bays in Park Lane, which will take the pressure off when we have sporting events, especially the Auskick, which ends up a very busy patch of dirt down there. So all up, it's a project that will really open up that area, and it will give the ability to conduct drainage works on Bar 1 and Bar 2 in the future once that underground drainage is in place. So the recommendation tonight is that Council awards contract C1617026 for drainage and parking upgrade works in Park Lane to Boyon Excavations, authorises the Chief Executive Officer to sign and seal documents for contract C1617026 for the upgrade of drainage and parking in Park Lane, and 3, discloses the contract price for this contract for the upgrade of the drainage and parking in Park Lane.
Any questions from the gallery? No questions from the gallery. Someone move the recommendation. Councillor Amery, Councillor Benton. Any discussion? No discussion? I'll declare the motion carried. Pardon me, with a contract price of $782,100 ex-GST and $869,000 including GST. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Clark.
So this next report is presented to Council to seek authorisation to award a contract for flood damage reinstatement from the flood damage that occurred last year. So when we go through these types of events, we always seek to get as much funding as we can from elsewhere, and the National Disaster Fund, which is a federal government fund, is covering this event. And we have a whole series of formalities we have to go through, but at this stage they've our initial estimates have been accepted by the Department of Treasury and Finance, so we've gone out to tender to have this work completed. So the recommendation tonight is that contract award contract C1617023 for 2016 flood damage reinstatement to Cook's Earth Moving Laser Landforming authorises the CEO to sign and seal documents for the contract and discloses the contract price for contract C1617023.
Questions from the gallery? Very quiet there tonight. Someone move the recommendation, please. Councillor Curry, Councillor Roos. Any discussion? And the contract price for this contract is $587,168 ex-GST and $645,884.80 including GST. Thank you. Development Services, Earthworks in the Farming Zone.
Conflict of interest in this matter, Mr Mayor, in relationship to an indirect conflict with a family member being rejected.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. This item tonight is an application that seeks planning approval to improve the drainage and the ultimate usability of approximately 93 hectares of grazing land through the use of some laser levelling. 90% of the land is proposed to be altered by not more than 7 centimetres, and the largest alteration is by 17 centimetres. The application has been advertised. There were 4 submissions that have been received. The majority of the submissions relate to off-site discharge onto adjoining land and adjoining roadsides. And a conciliation meeting has occurred with council's planners and members of our infrastructure team, and they have applied conditions that will limit the discharge of water from the land to pre-development levels, and they are satisfied that that will control the matter. The recommendation is that council resolves to issue a notice of decision to grant a permit.
Any questions from the gallery? No questions from the gallery. Someone move the recommendation. Move Councillor Bussell, second Councillor Curry. Any discussion? No discussion. I'll declare the motion carried. We're down to item 18, Advisory Committee reports. Who's doing that?
Thanks, Mr Mayor. This is a report we deal with each month, which basically brings minutes of the advisory committees that have been conducted during the time since we've last considered these to the council for consideration and endorsement.
Is there any questions from the gallery? That's the Audit Advisory Committee, Agriculture and Agribusiness Advisory Committee, and the Wangaratta Economic and Tourism Advisory Committee. Someone move the recommendation, please. Councillor Fuller. Seconded Councillor Curry. Any discussion? Any discussion on the motion? I'll declare the motion carried. Item 19, Records of Assembly of Councillors.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Again, these are administrative items that come up each month. There are 4 assemblies of councils from March and April here, which are from 4 separate briefing forums, and those are here to be received and endorsed by council.
Any questions from the gallery? Someone move the recommendation, please. Move Councillor Benton. Seconded Councillor Curry. Any discussion? I'll declare the motion carried. There are no notices of motion. There's no urgent business. Public question time. If you have a question to ask, I'd ask you to come to the seat here in the middle, state your name and address, and turn the microphone on. Yes.
Anne Dunstan in Tarrawingi. This is for Mr Clark. In the HB Bar Reserve, has there been a parking feasibility study done? There's been one done for the CBD, but not. I can't find a record for one for the HB Bar Reserve.
I don't believe there's been a parking feasibility study done, but there's been a long held plan to formalise the parking within the reserve itself. So that's the area between Bar 1 and Bar 2, which is currently an unsealed car park. We have plans to formalise that into a sealed car park. And there's also the scope to extend the car park that we constructed about 18 months ago over near the netball courts. That's also part of the long-term vision to increase the parking in addition to the 66 additional ones we're creating with this latest project.
Because as a user of the facility with small children, it is horrendous already with parking and events. And if you create the aquatic strategy like it's proposed to be developed, if you hold events like you're proposing, general users aren't going to be able to access those car parks. So
the extension to the car park we did 18 months ago will more than double that space. The formalising of the car park, the unsealed car park, will significantly increase the number of places as well. So all up will be several hundred car parks more than we have at present.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Further questions? You may sit there, Jim.
Yeah, okay. I realise that you've got other commitments later tonight, and therefore I want to be brief in this, but it's something that I believe is important and we should deal with it. 2 meetings ago here, the energy reduction plan was released, and you treated it in the normal way, saying, and if you look in the minutes you'll see that you should thank the people who did it and so on like that. I would like to suggest that you need to be much more active with this, and I was wondering whether you've considered at all making the principles that are used, that are developed in this document, making them available for businesses, and ultimately by another change, making them available for domestic use. So is it likely that you could go from for council use, because everything there is for council use, council buildings, everything. Right? Is there a chance that you might be able to take that and all the effort that's gone into it and adapt to these other groups? Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Jim. You wish?
Thanks, Jim, for the question. Yes, it is certainly possible for council to adapt the principles out of that plan, and we have actually done some work with some of the particular groups, and we did a project last year with the Rural Housing Network talking about some of those principles and actually garnering some product that could be used for renters of accommodation around Wangaratta to actually reduce their energy rates for that particular sector of the community. And we have also looked at, with our economic development unit, how we can work with our businesses to actually reduce the costs that they incur as well.
Any further questions? Mr. Fox.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Brian Fox. Mr Mayor, I notice in the Capital Works that there are a fairly extensive list of projects that are behind schedule that are in excess of $100,000. I would suspect that some of these are grossly over $100,000, and I would also suspect that the list here, if you include all of the projects behind, would be almost to the point of being unmanageable. I'm asking you, Mr Mayor, and the councillors and CEO, is it possible for us to mark time for just a little while and play catch up? We've got two projects that I'm quite positive, if you put them to a plebiscite, that they wouldn't get up, that we could just stop today, and they are the Maloney's Arcade 30 car park fiasco, as I would call it. I don't want to be offensive. And the swimming pool, the new swimming pool at the Bar Reserve. If we put those on hold, I'm not saying we're not ever going to do them, I'm just asking the council to put them on hold, play catch up, and let's get back to normal. Thank you.
Through the chair, I won't comment on the plebiscite side of things. I'll let you deal with that element of the question perhaps, but just to talk to the actual completion of our CapEx delivery, there are a few things that probably are worth mentioning, Brian. Thanks for the question. As Ruth outlined earlier, when you take into account the year-to-date spend, the commitments we've made through purchase orders and contracts being awarded, we expect to complete about 84 or 85% of this year's program CapEx, which is a pretty good effort, but not where we'd like it to be. We'd certainly like it to be in excess of 90 and preferably closer to 95%. There are some reasons for that lower completion rate. The storm events that we've had in the past few months have had a significant impact on the works that we deliver ourselves internally through our capital works program. We've had to take people off some of those capital jobs to do storm clean-up and storm damage repairs and go out and inspect work for funding through the federal government for emergency repairs, etc. So that diverts people from the normal course of their work to a degree and means we get a bit behind on that. We do have plans afoot to source some additional external resources to help us get that back on track. And the other thing that I was going to mention has just slipped my mind momentarily. I'm just looking at Alan. Yeah, there are a number of things where there are approval processes outside of our control, like our organic processing plant, which is dependent on EPA approval, a couple of significant projects which you did mention, which are dependent on approval by others. And I see we have the federal member in the gallery tonight, so hopefully she'll put in a good word for us for a couple of those projects if we ask her nicely. I won't comment on the other element, which I think was a plebiscite to see where people support it. The other thing I was going to mention, has just come back into my mind, and that is that we've done a significant amount of forward planning for CapEx delivery in future years, and we've got, I think, about $25 or $30 million worth of work that's going to occur over the next 2 or 3 financial years now, planned and designed and tender ready to go, which will obviously enable us to hit the ground running with the actual works, rather than trying to design things and build them in the same year, which is problematic.
Thank you.
Thank you. In respect to your request, Mr Fox, I think that's something that we will look at if we're successful in obtaining the grant funds. They're presently in the Minister's office in Canberra, and until we know where we're going there, I wouldn't think that we'd be wanting to make any decisions to do with capital works.
Thank you very much for the fullness of the answer. Thank you.
Any other questions? No other questions from the gallery? No other questions from the gallery. there's no other business. It gives me great pleasure to declare this meeting closed and ask you all to come downstairs and enjoy some fellowship with council and previous councillors of the rural city of Wangaratta. So I'll declare the meeting closed.